So, I was in the process of making a video talking about Liverpool, Chiesa, the sales, Ekitike, Wirtz, how they're doing, Guehi, Isak, everything going on at Liverpool. And I wanted to talk about one thing that Liverpool are doing really well that nobody's talking about, which I am going to talk about in a second. But then Isak just drops it. He just drops a statement. And we're going to talk about this in a second. And we're going to come to this later, my thoughts on this statement. Because this window has all been about Isak this, Ekitike is looking good, was originally Wirtz at the beginning, Wirtz this, Wirtz that. That it's taken away the attention from something that Liverpool have done, and something that Liverpool have done really well, and that is sales. These are all done deals. 205 million raised in sales, and all of this they've made a profit on. They've made a profit on all of these players. They're either academy, so it's pure profit, or they've made a profit on these players. Darwin Núñez, technically not a profit, but because of his book value, it's still a profit in terms of the eyes of PSR. So loads is going on at Liverpool, and I had a video to talk about the sales and how it's just an absolute masterclass. And I want to talk about Chiesa and Guehi and everything going on. But we've obviously got this Isak statement that we need to address. But I think with all this Isak drama that's going on, everyone's ignoring the fact that Liverpool have sold incredibly well. So I want to talk about this to begin with. Then I give you my thoughts on Chiesa, Ekitike, Wirtz, and Isak, and everything that's gone down there. Because a lot of people are saying, how can Liverpool afford Ekitike, Isak, Wirtz in the same window? It's not fair. I am a Manchester United fan, okay? I don't like Liverpool, but they're not cheating. They're doing this completely fairly. They've raised over 200 million in sales, okay? They didn't really spend much last summer. They won the league. The money they get from winning the league, being in the Champions League, being a big club, the shirt sales, on top of the money they've made in sales, on top of the lack of business they did last window, is the reason they can afford Ekitike, Wirtz, and Isak in the same window with Guehi and Frimpong and Kirkes. It's not cheating. They've made 200 million in sales. And a lot of the pure profit sales like Kwanzaa, if Liverpool sold Kwanzaa for 30 million, that's 30 million pure profit. If they buy Isak for 150 million and Newcastle all of a sudden agreed to split it across 5 years, then they would be paying 30 million a year for Isak, which Kwanzaa the sale would just pay off in itself. That's how PSR works. So nobody's talking, I feel like, about how well Liverpool has sold. Like 25 million for Ben Doak, 65 million for Diaz at his age, I think is quite good business. Even getting a bit of money for Trent in the end, Morton in the end, Núñez got a bit of money for Kwanzaa for 30 to 35 million is fantastic business. And I feel like it's not got much attention. A lot of people are ignoring the fact that Liverpool have made 200 million sales. Like, who on Sky Sports has said that? Who on TalkSport said that? I don't know, because Sky Sports and TalkSport are all obsessed with Alexander Isak. This, Isak this, Isak that, Isak this, Isak that. And you know what? Nobody knows the truth other than Alexander Isak and Newcastle United. And this is what Alexander Isak is saying is his truth. Now, first of all, he was meant to be at PFA Awards tonight, wasn't because of everything going on. He said this: I'm not at the ceremony tonight. With everything going on, it didn't feel right to be there, which is a shame. I think he should have still gone. I've kept quiet for a long time while others have spoken. That silence has allowed people to push their own version of events, even though they know it doesn't reflect what was really said and agreed behind closed doors. So it doesn't reflect what was really said and agreed behind closed doors. Big statement there. I just realised you probably can't see that on my screen because it's not very big. He said, the reality is that promises were made and the club has known my position for a long time. To now act as if these issues are only emerging is misleading. When promises are broken and trust is lost, the relationship cannot continue. That is where things are right now, and why change is in the best interest for everyone, not just myself, Isak. That is brutal. That is Isak basically saying in that last sentence, that's where things are for me right now, and why change is in the best interest of everyone. Everyone, he's saying Newcastle, not just myself. Promises are broken and lost. The reality were that promises were made and the club has known my position for a long time. Now, I'm going to look at this at a completely non-biased angle. I understand why Newcastle fans are upset with Isak, because even though Isak has put out this statement, and even though Isak feels he's been mistreated, as a professional footballer, I don't think Isak has acted in the most professional way. Eddie Howe did a lot for Isak. Newcastle done a lot for Isak. He got Champions League football, and maybe he could have acted like an Eze who's set to move to Tottenham and still play while this sorts out. Okay? I understand Newcastle United fans' frustration. However, at the same time, if Newcastle have lied to Isak, promised he can move, given him all these false promises, then Isak has to do something drastic. Now, what I think is the situation, in my honest opinion, is this. Newcastle would have sold Isak by now, and it would not have dragged out like this by now if Newcastle had not been rejected by about 1 million strikers. I actually think Isak is angry, he's frustrated at Newcastle, and I get that. And unfortunately, the Newcastle fans and Eddie Howe have to suffer because of a little bit of miscommunication at the top. However, I think it is the fact Newcastle went for Delap, went to Chelsea. Newcastle went there for João Pedro, went to Chelsea. Newcastle went there for Ekitike. Liverpool brought Ekitike, which makes it harder for them to get Isak now. I think had they signed Ekitike, I think Liverpool would have signed Isak, but Liverpool wanted both. Yeah. Then obviously Sesko goes to Manchester United, and it continues. And Vissa, Brentford are trying not to release him. This is now doing the similar thing to Isak. There's Strand Larsen, but Wolves sold Cunha, and they are at threat of relegation. There's obviously links to Samu and all of this. Newcastle haven't found a replacement for Isak. And I think because Newcastle haven't found a replacement for Isak, they're not letting him go anywhere, which I understand. I'll be honest, I fully understand why Newcastle will not sell Isak till they got a replacement. Had Newcastle brought in Ekitike and they were still refusing to release Isak, I would say, come on, Newcastle. Do you know what I mean? Come on. You've given the guy the promise that he can go. You've got his replacement. Why are you refusing to let him go? Unless Liverpool are offering pathetic money, I'd be like, okay, if Liverpool are offering 130 to 150 million pounds, I'd get it. But I do think Isak has every right to be annoyed. Isak has every right to be frustrated. I don't think it's fair on the Newcastle United fans how he's acted, but I get why he's annoyed and upset. He's been promised this move for a long time. He was told he was going to get this move, and it's been stopped. But I do think a big part of it is because Newcastle haven't got an alternative. Maybe I'm seeing this in a different way. Maybe I'm seeing this in a different way to everyone else, and you have to let me know your thoughts down below. You know, the statement from Isak is big. That silence has allowed people to push their own versions of events. I think there's a lot of fake news out there. I think there's a lot of stuff written about Isak that isn't true. And I think a lot of things will be taken out of context because fan bases will have their own way of interpreting things. He said that things were said and agreed behind closed doors, a bit like Gyökeres with Sporting. And the reality is that promises were made and the club has known my position for a long time. To now act as if these issues are only emerging now is misleading. So if they've promised him for a long time he can leave this summer and now not letting him leave this summer, Isak has every right to be upset. I do think had Newcastle with Ekitike, it could have been different. But promises are broken, trust is lost, the relationship can't continue. That's Isak basically saying he quits Newcastle and release him now. Now look, Newcastle need to get rid of Isak. They need to sell him. The relationship is gone. You can say it's letting him win, this and that, but Eddie Howe's not going to want a player that's gone and done that. And the player wants to move. And I think it's Liverpool bid 130 million. Just let him go. Just release him. But I understand not selling him until you've got Vissa, whoever you want in the door. So that's my thoughts on the opinion. I understand why Isak is upset. I understand Isak has been lied to, and that's not the best from Newcastle. And unfortunately, Newcastle fans and Eddie Howe are the ones that will have to suffer because it's not fair on them because of mistreatment at the top. But if we continue on, I want to talk about Chiesa. I want to talk about Liverpool. I want to talk about Guehi and everything going on because, as I said, I feel like everyone is so obsessed with Isak, this and that, that everyone is ignoring that Liverpool have made 200 million in sales in a single window, which is absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. So, yeah, let's talk about Liverpool. Let's talk about their plans because I said this in my video the other day. Obviously, Chiesa, he didn't go on tour. He was set to leave. Then Nunes was sold. Then Diaz was sold. Sadly, Diogo Jota passed away. And Liverpool are definitely nowhere near as stacked in the forward positions. Obviously, Rio Enyimola is back up for Gakpo, but he's a very young kid. If Isak comes in, Isak and Ekitike can be central. Salah's going to go to AFCON. Frimpong can play right wing, but he will predominantly be right back with Conor Bradley's injury issues. So Chiesa staying at Liverpool makes much more sense because he's going to have more of a role to play. And I do think his first season was also injury management because he's had a lot of injuries from Arne Slot. I think he should have had more opportunities under Arne Slot. I think there's times where he should have come off the bench and not Darwin Núñez. And Darwin Núñez had come off the bench a few times last season, a bit atrocious, but he did redeem himself in the Brentford game, where maybe you could have looked at it and gone, why isn't Chiesa getting a look in? Now, Chiesa's come off the bench. He scored that goal. It was a big goal. He obviously showed what he could do in the Carabao Cup final. And Romano said that Chiesa's agent has informed Liverpool about clear desire to stay. Chiesa considered leaving in June and July when Liverpool rejected bids for Diaz and he was left out of the tour. But now Diaz is left, there's space for him. And I think that's the right move because I think with Salah at AFCON, you need a backup right winger. He can also cover all across the front three. He gives you another option if Gakpo's injured. Rio Enyimola, why he looks fantastic. He's still so young. And imagine you've got to win every game. It's the last 10 games of the season. Gakpo is out. So you're relying on Rio Enyimola for 10 games in a row at, 16 years of age to put in Gakpo level performances. It wouldn't be fair on the kid to put that much pressure on him. You know, not everybody's Lamine Yamal. And I think having someone with a bit of experience like Chiesa in there would be smart. And I always felt that he never really got a chance last season. I always felt there was more to give from Chiesa. He's not an expensive player, and I think this makes a lot of sense. Now, one area Liverpool obviously need to address is centre-back. Now, Leone is in, but he's very young. He's more of an understudy. Guehi is obviously the perfect name. And David Ornstein said, if Guehi leaves Crystal Palace, he only has eyes for Liverpool. The Merseyside club believe they already possess 4 elite central defenders, so are not expected to seek an alternative if they fail to land him. This is a situation where Crystal Palace will not want to lose Marc Guehi on the free. I think it will go down to deadline day with Liverpool hoping they can get him on a cheaper deal because it's deadline day. I know Joe Gomez is fit. I know Liverpool have signed Leone, but I think they will need Guehi because Konate's future's up in the air. Now, I do think some of Liverpool's poor defensive performance in the last 2 games has come from not having Gravenberch and any protection of the defence. But I think with Konate's injury record and Van Dijk's age and the fact that Guehi can play either side, has Premier League experience, Joe Gomez doesn't have a good injury record, Kwanzaa and obviously Matip has not been replaced, Guehi makes sense. Guehi is a leader. He's 2-footed. He fits in. He's potentially good enough to push Konate out. He's strong competition. But I want to talk about Liverpool's attack because I think Liverpool's attack next season is obviously what's going to win them games. There is questions over the defence, over the defensive midfield position, but their attack is what's going to win them games. These were my notes on Ekitike when I did my video on Ekitike. Ball control, good under pressure, technically good. We've already seen that. These are notes from 2 months ago. Exceptional at dropping deep, linking midfield to attack, can hold off defenders, find passes, the little small passes, run the channels. And he gets compared to Isak sometimes for the size and the pace, but he can work well with Isak. He's probably a little bit more technical than Isak. And at 23, he can go into complete 9. But I said he's a very technical player. And you'll see that in Ekitike, the goal and assist, the technicality in small spaces and central areas, the ability to run the channels. Ekitike's got a lot to give. It's not a situation that Isak comes in and he walks in. Isak's got competition. He can play with Isak. They can create a Marmoush-Ekitike type relationship. Florian Wirtz didn't have a great game versus Bournemouth, but that's one game. He's intelligent. He's got a very good football IQ. He's going to combine with the good players around him well. He can be a hybrid. He can be a second striker. He can make killer passes, get between the lines. And he's proven at Leverkusen. He's proven it in big games. He's proven numbers, goals and assists. And he's very good in tight areas. And if you look at the technicality in that Liverpool attack, going into next season, it's pretty insane because it looks like they're going to get Isak. I just cannot see Isak going back to Newcastle after that statement. I really cannot see it happening. That is him basically saying it's the end. And if you're Eddie Howe, do you want Isak back? Like, that's the big question there as well. Anyway, this is obviously Liverpool's attack going into next season. Obviously, players like Szoboszlai could play false 9, maybe, you know, and Wirtz could if something happened to Ekitike and Isak. But the 2 left-wing options are probably Gakpo and Rio Enyimola. The 2 striker options are probably Ekitike and Isak. The 2 right-wing options are Salah and Chiesa. Obviously, Frimpong can play right-wing. Chiesa can play central. Isak and Ekitike can actually play together with one of them going off to the left. Wirtz will be the 10. Szoboszlai can also be the 10. McAllister can even be the 10. Liverpool's front 4 options is very good. Anyway, there is reports coming out that Newcastle had no idea that Isak was going to release a confrontational statement tonight. I don't think this is the end of the Isak drama. Well, obviously, that's a very obvious statement to make. I think there's a lot more to come. I think after that statement, there could be fallouts tomorrow. So keep an eye on the news. Thank you for watching. Bye.